Realized vol did have an uptick because we obviously had some quite sharp weakness, which you can see from these OHLC charts where we sliced down last Thursday, almost doubling the implied move. And then we have recovered since then. So reasonably decent realized vol going from around 20 to 30 on Bitcoin, whereas ETH had got down to 40, but that's jumped back to around 50 odd. The front end vols on Bitcoin were pretty flat, whilst ETH did still continue to lose about 5 vol points. Carry's getting squeezed out, so you can see a week ago we had a lot of positive carry in both assets. That's been squeezed down to not a lot, basically. So we're looking at about 5 vols in that order of magnitude of positive carry still. So the gamma sellers have got less juice to capture, basically, if they now come and sell vol at these levels and realize persists at where it is right now. Now, if you think realize is going back down to the low levels it was last week, then arguably it's still an okay time to sell vol. But, in terms of variance risk premium, that's how we measure it. We compare current implied to trailing realize that we've just seen to get a sense for, how much juice there is. Like I said, only last Thursday's drop really big enough to breach the implied move on both assets. But we have had a fairly orderly recovery since then within the implied move ranges, just sort of testing them on Bitcoin, but not really breaking them. Implied vol around 30 in the front end on Bitcoin does look like it doesn't look like it's got a lot of room, right, to go lower. Because, what is, based on a 7 days, 24/7 market that crypto is, the kind of 1% a day volatility is around 19. So 30% volatility is only around 1.5% a day for the break even move. For crypto, that doesn't feel like a lot, right? So I think we're going to struggle to see vol go a lot lower than it is now. And that's going to probably, and the risk that gamma sellers are taking selling vol at these levels is quite high, right? Where if there is a piece of news that moves crypto, it could easily move 5%, and that's already 3 times a break-even move. So risk reward doesn't feel very good to be short in gamma in crypto at these levels. We can see the charts. We've got these very steep contangos. The interesting thing about this as well is that it's a bit of a right angle, especially on Ethereum. You can see here where when you get into that last week, the vol just completely craters. So it's like it's not really a smooth curve. It's like a right angle, right? And to some extent, you similar sort of story in Bitcoin as well. So what does that mean? That means that the sub 1 week options are just falling off a cliff, right? So people are just happy to sell like 1 or 2 DTE options at a really, really low vol, right? And the kind of premium is being more parked in the longer expiries from 1 week to 1 month out, basically. Okay. So it seems like you are getting supply in the really short dated part of the curve, because that's basically what happens, and it creates this creates this vol surface that looks a bit like a right angle. Anyway, you can see the moves here. About half a vol higher on Bitcoin for most of the curve, half a vol to a vol, and then Ethereum losing a bit in the front, but fairly stable in the back, not doing too much there. If we have a look at kind of time series, quite a wide, quite steep contango, staying stable there in Bitcoin. ETH did tighten up a bit, flattening the curve, but then has steepened again recently. You can see the skew getting to about -6 on both names on the short dated stuff, on the 1 week stuff. We can also see that here. That has bounced though, so we were at like -6 for put skew in the front, but that has bounced to about -2 on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin short dated puts trading at 2 vol premium to calls, but as you go to the back end, that premium goes to 0. So you just got a neutral skew in the back end there on Bitcoin. And then as we look at Ethereum, front end's at about flat. There is a little dip into puts, but nothing major. And then once we go to November, we're flat again, and anything past November, we're sitting in quite a healthy call skew. So really seeing similar story that we've seen for a while now, that Ethereum is still considered, if we look at longer dated skew, and that's where there's stability. In short dated skew, it just follows spot around, right? When spot rallies, you go towards calls. When spot sells off, you go towards puts and deeper into puts. Generally, we have been in puts in the front end for a while, though. But what I'm saying is the back end skew is quite stable. So the stability of the back end skew being flat in Bitcoin and being 2 vols for calls in ETH is telling us the story that ETH upside for year end and into early next year is favored. That's where the outperformance is going to come from, according to the options market, basically. Okay. And then looking at the relative value side, continuing that discussion, ETH Bitcoin obviously holding that 0.035 level. Vol spread did compress to around 25 in the front. It's about 20 in the back, but that does feel like a new normal right now. It doesn't look like we're going to go back to the days of 10 vols or less. It seems that after that really explosive move from 2,800 to 4,800 on ETH, gamma sellers are going to be a bit more shy on ETH, right? So I think people are empowered to sell more gamma on Bitcoin because it's a bit more of an institutional, more stable asset, basically, and less volatile. It's matured, basically, whereas ETH is still yet to mature. We don't know when it's going to mature. We don't know how much more money is going to fly into these digital asset treasuries, these DATs. We don't know if this thing settles at 6,000 or whether it's done and it settles at 4,000, right? But the reality is there's not enough evidence of stability, and there's not enough call overwriting and supply of vol to get that vol back down to like anywhere close to Bitcoin vol right now. So that's where we are, and I think until we get to a more saturated institutional adoption where loads more overwriting happens, I think the spread is going to stay at around 20 vols or more. Okay. One interesting observation, not on these charts, but that I noticed was Solana vol has dropped quite dramatically. So you can see that in Amber Data as well, which is what I use to do all this stuff. And Amber Data's vol GUI actually is free for anyone to use right now, so you can go on there and have a look for yourself. But basically, Solana vols dropped down to about 70 as well. If we go out to December, you can trade options out to December on Solana as well, so you've got longer maturities than we're used to having. So about a 3-month option, 70 vol. On Solana, that feels cheap, right? Given that we know what Solana can do, obviously it needs a bit of a catalyst and a bit of a narrative. But in terms of what we've seen Solana do in the past, to be able to own that 3-month vol at 70 when ETH's only trading at like 65, feels like Solana's being offered to you quite cheaply, right? So I don't know if it's a case of, as that liquidity has come online, people who own tokens and own maybe options on other tokens see Solana as an obvious hedge to some of their altcoins, and that's why they're banging out this vol. But to me, that Solana vol at 70, if you like Solana for a year-end rally and you think this thing could go back to 300 and above, then those calls probably look quite good value, basically, right? So something to think about there. Have a look on Deribit, if you are able to trade on that venue, and see what those calls look like. But they don't sound crazy expensive to me. All right, that is it for this week's Crypto Options Weekly. I'll catch you guys next week. Cheers.
Hi everyone. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. Remember, this is just a little taster of what we do at Options Insight. To get access to all our research, including my in-depth vol market insights, flows and positioning report, and my portfolio trades, and a whole lot more, you can sign up at options-insight.com. I'll see you soon.